Picture this moment with me. You're 18 years old. You're running through the streets of Portland at night, your lungs burning, your feet bleeding because you lost your shoes 3 blocks ago. Behind you, footsteps. Getting closer. Always closer. And you absolutely know that if he catches you, you're dead. You burst through the door of the fanciest restaurant you've ever seen. Rich people eating expensive food, security guards in suits. And in the corner, sitting alone like he owns the whole city, is a man everyone whispers about, Dmitry Volkov, the Russian who makes even other criminals nervous. You have 2 choices. Run back into the night, where a monster is waiting, or run toward a different kind of monster, and pray he has mercy. Welcome back to Ken's Romance Stories. What I'm about to share with you is the story of Sofia Martinez, a college freshman who made an impossible choice that saved her life and exposed a horror that had been hiding in plain sight. This is about the night a girl with nowhere else to run chose the devil she didn't know over the one she did. And it's about Dmitry Volkov, a man so broken by his sister's murder that he spent 13 years waiting for a chance at redemption that looked exactly like this. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button because this story has a twist that will leave you absolutely speechless. And I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why sometimes the scariest person in the room is exactly who you need. Let's begin. Asterisk. Act 1. The Girl Who Ran. Asterisk. The crystal chandeliers of Lava Laura cast amber light across white tablecloths and polished silverware. Soft piano music drifted through air that smelled of truffle oil and aged wine. Portland's elite filled the tables: tech executives, lawyers, city council members, people whose biggest concerns were stock portfolios and vacation homes. Dmitry Volkov sat in his corner booth, the one with his back to the wall and clear sightlines to both entrances. At 23, he looked like he belonged on magazine covers instead of FBI watch lists. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pushed back from a face too beautiful to be as dangerous as everyone knew it was. Ice blue eyes that tracked every movement in the restaurant, with the focused awareness of a predator. His suit was custom, midnight blue that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, a watch on his wrist that could have paid someone's tuition. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, and barely controlled violence. He was reading something on his phone when the door burst open. The crash shattered Lava Laura's careful atmosphere, like a brick through glass. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the piano player's hands stuttered over the keys. A girl stumbled through the entrance. Young, 18, maybe 19, Hispanic, with long dark hair wild around her face. Her clothes, jeans, and a university sweatshirt were torn, one sleeve hanging by threads. Her feet were bare, leaving small bloody prints on the marble floor. But it was her face that made Dmitry's chest tighten. Terror. Pure, animal terror carved into every feature. Eyes wide enough to show white all around the iris. Mouth open in gasps that couldn't quite become screams. The look of someone who'd seen death coming and was still running. The hostess moved to intercept her, professional smile already forming. Security guards positioned themselves near the door, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The girl's eyes swept the restaurant desperately, looking for something, someone, anyone who might help. Then her gaze locked onto Dmitry. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other across the expensive space. Him, perfectly still in his corner. Her, swaying on bleeding feet in the doorway. And something passed between them. Recognition without familiarity. Understanding without words. She ran toward him. Not away from the door. Toward the most dangerous man in Portland. Choosing her monster with the desperate clarity of someone who'd run out of options. Security moved to stop her. Dmitry's hand came up. One finger. Barely a gesture. But his men froze instantly. Years of training recognizing an order that didn't need to be spoken aloud. She reached his table and collapsed against it, her hands clutching the white linen like a drowning person grabbing a life preserver. Her breathing was ragged, torn from a throat that had been screaming. Her whole body trembled, with exhaustion, and adrenaline, and terror. Dmitry set down his phone with careful precision. His expression hadn't changed, calm, almost bored, but his eyes had sharpened, taking in every detail. The torn clothes, the bare bloody feet, the defensive wounds on her arms. The way she kept looking at the door. The entire restaurant watched in silence, waiting, wondering what would happen when someone brought chaos into Dmitry Volkov's ordered world. He leaned forward slightly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, accented, Russian vowels shaping English words in ways that made everything sound like a threat or a promise. Who is coming? The girl's mouth moved but no sound came out. She tried again, forcing words through a throat that didn't want to work. Professor, she gasped, choked on air and fear. Professor Marcus Chen, from the university. He's been... She couldn't finish. The words stuck, like broken glass. Dmitry's expression still hadn't changed. How far behind you? I don't, 2 blocks maybe. I ran from campus. Took his keys when he wasn't looking. Her hand fumbled in her pocket, producing a key ring that clattered onto the table. He'll be here, he'll find me. He always finds. The door opened again. The girl made a sound that wasn't quite human, a whimper that came from somewhere beyond fear, in that place where the mind starts breaking to protect itself. She tried to hide behind Dimitri's chair, her bloody hands leaving marks on expensive fabric. A man entered, mid-40s, Asian features, wearing a cardigan and khakis that screamed tenured academic, wire-rimmed glasses. Slightly disheveled in the way of professors who spent more time with books than mirrors, he looked harmless, concerned, exactly like someone who should be helping students, not hunting them. His eyes found the girl immediately. Relief washed over his face, so perfectly performed it would have convinced anyone who didn't know what monsters looked like. Sophia! Thank God. His voice carried across the restaurant, warm with worry. Everyone's been so concerned. Your roommate called campus security when you didn't come back from our research session. He started toward them, hand extended in a gesture meant to appear comforting. I know you're confused right now. The medication I prescribed can cause disorientation sometimes. Let's get you back to campus where you can rest. Medication, disorientation, concern. Every word carefully chosen to reframe the narrative, to paint her as unstable, himself as the helpful professor trying to assist a troubled student. Sophia pressed herself against the wall behind Dimitri's chair, shaking her head frantically. Words tumbled out faster now. Desperate. He's lying. There's no medication. He drugged me. In his office. I woke up, there were cameras. Other girls. Photos on his computer. I grabbed his keys and ran, but he... Sophia, sweetheart. You're not making sense. Professor Chen's voice stayed gentle. Patient. The tone of someone dealing with a difficult child. He addressed the restaurant at large now, performing for an audience. She's one of my graduate students. Brilliant mind. But she's been struggling with some mental health challenges. I've been working with the University Counseling Center to get her help. Brilliant. The perfect lie. Mental health stigma. Weaponized to discredit a victim, before she could even speak. Dimitri finally moved. He stood slowly, unfolding from the booth with the controlled grace of someone who'd been trained to make every movement count. At 6'3", he had 4 inches on Professor Chen. His suit jacket hung open just enough to show the weapon holstered at his side. The professor stopped walking. Smile still in place but now uncertain, recognizing something in Dimitri's stillness that made prey instincts scream warnings. You're in my restaurant. Dimitri's voice was conversational, almost pleasant, frightening my guest. This is poor manners, Professor. Chen's smile widened, now directed at Dimitri, man to man. Reasonable adults dealing with an unfortunate situation. I apologize for the disruption, Mr. Volko. The name landed like a hammer. Chen's smile froze. Everyone in Portland's criminal underworld knew that name. But so did academics who read newspapers, who paid attention to the city's power structures, visible and invisible. Mr. Volkov. Chen's voice had lost some of its warmth. I understand you're a businessman. I'm sure you can appreciate my position. I'm responsible for this young woman's well-being. The university holds me accountable. Show me your phone. Dimitri interrupted. I'm sorry? Your phone. Show me. Now. Chen's hand moved to his pocket, then stopped. I don't see how that's relevant. Alexei. Dimitri said the name without raising his voice. A man appeared from somewhere near the bar. Massive. 6'5" and built like he bench-pressed trucks. Former Russian military, though which branch nobody asked. He moved with eerie silence for someone his size. Professor Chen took a step back. This is outrageous. You can't just, I have rights. I'm a respected academic. I'll call the police. Please do. Dimitri's smile was colder than his eyes. I'm curious what they'll find on that phone you're so reluctant to show me. Something flickered in Chen's expression, the mask slipping just enough to show what lived underneath. Calculation. Rage. The expression of someone whose carefully constructed world was crumbling and who was deciding whether to fight or flee. Sophia spoke again, her voice stronger now, finding courage in Dimitri's presence. There are videos, on his phone and his computer, of me, of other girls. Some of them, her voice cracked. Some of them aren't moving anymore, aren't fighting. I think some of them might be. She couldn't finish, didn't need to. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Dimitri's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the temperature around him. The restaurant suddenly felt colder, darker, as if violence had become a presence you could sense without seeing. Alexei, take his phone. Chen backed up another step. You have no authority. Authority? Dimitri tilted his head slightly. No. Authority is for police and judges and people who pretend laws protect everyone equally. I have something simpler. I have a choice about what happens to you in the next 60 seconds. And which choice I make depends entirely on what we find on that phone. His voice never rose, never showed emotion. The complete control somehow more terrifying than any threat. Chen's hand went to his pocket. For a moment, everyone thought he was reaching for his phone. Then his other hand appeared holding something small and black. A gun. The restaurant erupted in screams. People dove under tables. Security guards drew weapons. Dmitri moved. He was fast. Faster than someone his size should be. Training that had been hammered into muscle memory in places that didn't care about rules or safety. His hand caught Chen's wrist, twisting with precise force. Bone cracked. The gun clattered to the floor. Chen screamed, tried to pull away. Dmitri held him effortlessly, one hand controlling the professor's broken wrist, the other reaching into Chen's pocket to extract his phone. Alexei, call Morrison. The massive Russian already had his phone out. She'll want to come herself for this. Dmitri studied Chen's face. The professor had gone gray, cradling his shattered wrist, all pretense finally abandoned. What looked back at Dmitri now was rage and calculation, and the cold evaluation of someone deciding if he could still escape. Don't, Dmitri said quietly. Running would be very unwise. So would lying. The girl has already told me enough. Anything you say now that contradicts her story will make me significantly less patient. And you want me patient, Professor. Trust me on this. He unlocked Chen's phone with the man's own thumb, ignoring the cry of pain. Started scrolling. His expression remained neutral, but his grip on Chen's wrist tightened incrementally with each swipe. Sophia had slid down the wall behind the booth, arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. She watched Dmitri like he was the only solid thing in a world that had started dissolving around her. Alexei moved to stand between her and the exit, not threatening, protecting, making sure nothing else got close. The phone screen cast blue light across Dmitri's face. Whatever he was seeing didn't show in his expression, but his jaw tightened. Once, twice. On the third photo, he closed his eyes for just a moment. A crack in his control so brief most people would have missed it. When he opened them again, they were completely empty, dead. The eyes of someone who'd seen this before, and learned that some darkness never washed off no matter how much blood you spilled trying. How many? His voice was softer now, more dangerous for the gentleness. Chen said nothing. Dmitri's thumb moved across the phone screen, counting. 12. The word came out flat. 12 girls. Different girls. Some recent, some months old. All your students, Professor? Still silence. The girl said some weren't moving, weren't fighting. I count 3 videos where they're not moving at all. Not drugged, not unconscious, not breathing. The restaurant had gone so quiet, you could hear the Willamette River moving outside the windows. Everyone had stopped pretending not to listen. Some truths were too heavy to ignore. Detective Sarah Morrison arrived with 4 uniforms and 2 detectives in suits. She was Korean-American, early 40s, with the kind of weariness that came from 20 years watching the city eat its young. She took one look at the scene, Dmitri holding a professor with a broken wrist, Sophia huddled behind furniture, Alexei blocking the exit like a mountain, and sighed. Volkov, tell me you didn't kill anyone in a restaurant full of witnesses. Not yet. He held out the phone. But the night is young. Morrison took it, started scrolling. Her expression shifted through several configurations. Professional detachment, disgust, rage. The last one won. Marcus Chen, you're under arrest. She started reading him his rights, while snapping cuffs on his wrists. The broken one made him scream again. She didn't slow down. One of the uniforms approached Sophia carefully, hands visible, voice gentle. Miss, I'm Officer Rodriguez. You're safe now. Can you tell me what happened? Sophia looked at Dmitri. He nodded once. Permission or reassurance or both. She started talking, slow at first, then faster. Words pouring out like a wound finally able to bleed. About research assistant positions that required late-night hours alone. About coffee that tasted wrong. About waking up, unable to move with cameras recording. About seeing other girls' faces in files on his computer. About grabbing his keys when he'd stepped away for just a moment, and running with everything she had. Morrison recorded it all on her phone, documenting evidence with the methodical care of someone who'd lost cases to technicalities before. The computer is in my office, at the university, Chen said suddenly. His voice had changed. No more warm professor. This was flat, emotionless. The real person underneath the performance. 3rd floor of Davidson Hall. The files are encrypted, but the password is in a notebook in my desk drawer. I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer. The detectives exchanged glances. Full confession with directions to evidence was suspicious. Too easy. Why tell us? Morrison asked. Chen looked at her, then at Dmitri. Something moved behind his eyes. The calculation of someone who'd already lost and was just deciding how to minimize damage. Because if I don't cooperate with you, you'll let him have me. He jerked his head toward Dmitri, and I'd rather take my chances with the justice system than with what he does to people who hurt children. Smart man, broken and twisted and monstrous. but smart enough to know that prison was safer than Dmitry Volkov's basement. Morrison's team took Chen out in handcuffs, reading him his rights for the third time because lawyers loved technicalities. Sophia gave a preliminary statement, then was taken to a hospital for examination and evidence collection. Before she left, she turned back to Dmitry. Thank you. I didn't know where else to go. I heard people talk about you, that you were dangerous but you had rules. That you protected? She stopped. Started again. Thank you. Dmitry inclined his head slightly. Officer Rodriguez will stay with you. No one else gets close. Understand? Sophia nodded and left with the police. The restaurant slowly returned to a version of normal. Patrons resumed eating, though conversations stayed hushed. Staff cleaned up with efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first time violence had visited La Valora. Morrison stayed behind. She stood across from Dmitry's table, arms crossed, expression carefully neutral. We're going to find things, she said. Aren't we? Bad things. Yes. 3 girls, he said, weren't moving. That means bodies somewhere. Yes. And you know I can't just let you. She stopped, sighed, tried again. There are rules, due process. He gets a lawyer. He gets a trial. I know, but you're going to do something anyway. Dmitry looked at her. Really looked. Do you have children, detective? 2 daughters, 15 and 12. Then you understand. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I can't condone vigilante justice. I'm not asking you to. But if something were to happen to Professor Chen while he's in custody, something unfortunate and difficult to explain, I would investigate very thoroughly. Of course. And if I found evidence that someone had interfered with a prisoner in police custody, I would prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Naturally. They stared at each other, understanding passing between them in the spaces between words where truth lived. He has videos of 3 dead girls, Morrison said finally. Bodies we haven't found yet. Families who deserve closure. If those bodies turn up because someone convinces him to talk before his lawyer shuts him up, that would be good police work, detective. She nodded once. Stay out of my crime scene, Volkov. Always do. Morrison left. The restaurant emptied. Soon it was just Dmitry, Alexei, and the staff cleaning up the last evidence that anything had happened. Dmitry sat back down in his booth. His wine glass was still there, untouched since before Sophia had run through the door. He picked it up, set it down without drinking. His hands were steady. His expression was calm. But Alexei had worked for him long enough to read the signs invisible to everyone else. Boss? Find them. Dmitry's voice was soft. Empty. The 3 dead girls. Chen will tell the police where the bodies are eventually. But I want to know first. I want to know their names, their ages, everything. And then we make sure their families know the truth. Not the version that protects the university's reputation. Not the version that makes professors look like isolated monsters instead of symptoms of systems that enabled them. The truth. Alexei nodded, hesitated. There's more, isn't there? You saw something else on that phone. Dmitry closed his eyes. He had a contact list, other email addresses, shared folders. He wasn't working alone. The words hung in the air like poisoned smoke. How many others? 7 confirmed. 2 more possible. All academics. All at different universities across Oregon and Washington. They were trading content, comparing notes, treating it like, his voice cracked, just slightly, like a research project, collaborative study. Alexei's massive hands curled into fists. What do you want to do? Dmitry opened his eyes. They were still empty, still cold, but something burned way down in those depths. Something that had been burning for 13 years, waiting for fuel. Morrison will arrest them. Eventually. She'll build cases, follow procedures. Some will go to prison. Some will get good lawyers and walk. Some will disappear into plea bargains and administrative leave and reputation management. And I'm going to make sure they understand that some crimes don't end just because you've been arrested. That some debts get paid in ways courtrooms can't calculate. It wasn't a threat. Threats were loud, theatrical. This was quieter, colder. A statement of fact about the future, delivered with the certainty of someone who'd already made every decision that mattered. Alexei smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. What do you need? Everything. Addresses, families, habits, weaknesses. I want to know where they live, where they work, where their children go to school. I want to know every secret they think they've buried. Every piece of leverage that exists in this world. Get it all. The full network treatment. Yes. This will take time. Weeks maybe. I'm patient. Dmitry stood, buttoning his suit jacket. 13 years patient. A few more weeks won't matter. They walked out of La Valora together. The Portland night was cool, carrying the smell of rain and river water. Traffic moved on the bridges, red lights trailing into the distance like blood cells through arteries. Dmitry stood on the sidewalk, looking at nothing, seeing everything. His city. The place he'd built into something approaching safe for people who had nowhere else to turn. Call Dr. Chen, he said quietly. Your therapist? Boss, it's almost midnight. She'll answer. Tell her I need a session. tomorrow, early. Alexei pulled out his phone, but he was watching Dmitry with concern that went beyond professional. You okay? No. The honesty came easier than it should have. That girl, Sophia, she was 18, same age I am now, 13 years ago, when, he stopped, couldn't finish. When your sister died. When my sister was murdered by people everyone trusted. People with credentials and reputations and access. People who thought their positions protected them from consequences. And tonight I got to save someone. Dmitry's voice went softer. For the first time since Katya died, I got there in time. That girl ran to me, and I was able to stop it. Do you understand what that means? Alexei did. He'd worked for Dmitry long enough to understand that every protection racket, every intervention, every time they disappeared someone who hurt the vulnerable, it was all trying to save one 11-year-old girl who'd been dead for 13 years. You can't save Katya, Alexei said gently. No matter how many you save now, she's still gone. I know. Dmitry's voice cracked again. But maybe if I save enough others, eventually I'll feel like I've paid the debt, like I've balanced the scales enough that my father wouldn't have had to. He stopped, breathed, collected himself. Just make the calls. Find the others. And Alexei? He turned to face his lieutenant. When we do find them, I want them to know it's coming. I want them to feel what those girls felt. The fear, the helplessness, the knowledge that no one's coming to save them. That's not justice. That's revenge. Justice is for courts and laws, and people who believe the system works. This is something older. This is the kind of accounting my father taught me. The kind that doesn't care about procedure or precedent. The kind that just balances blood with blood. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Alexei nodded. I'll make the calls. Dmitry walked to his car. Black Mercedes. Bulletproof glass. The kind of protection money could buy from everything except the memories that lived inside your head. He sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before starting the engine, thinking about a girl with dark braids who'd loved ballet, about another girl with wild hair who'd run into a restaurant with bloody feet, about 7 professors who thought their intelligence protected them from predators smarter and more patient than they'd ever be. His phone buzzed. Dr. Chen, confirming a 7 a.m. session tomorrow. She didn't ask why. She'd learned years ago that Dmitry called when he needed to, not when convenient. He drove through Portland's empty streets, past the university where Sophia had worked in Professor Chen's office, past coffee shops and bookstores and normal places where normal people lived normal lives that didn't include running from monsters. At a red light, he pulled out his own phone, scrolled to a photo he kept buried in a folder marked K, his sister, 11 years old, ballet costume. The last picture taken before she disappeared. I got there in time tonight, he whispered to the photo. I know it doesn't fix anything, doesn't bring you back, but I got there in time, finally. The light turned green. He drove on. Behind him, Portland slept uneasily. And in police custody, Professor Marcus Chen sat in an interrogation room with a broken wrist, and the dawning understanding that surviving Dmitry Volkov tonight didn't mean he'd survive Dmitry Volkov forever. Some debts took time to collect, but they always, eventually, came due. And Dmitry Volkov was very, very patient. Asterisk, asterisk, closing, asterisk, asterisk. If this story reminded you that protection sometimes comes from unexpected places, that courage looks like an 18-year-old girl choosing the least worst option, and that some debts can never be fully repaid, then you understand exactly what happened that night in Portland. Subscribe to Ken's Romance Stories. Drop a comment telling me, if you were running from danger, would you have had the courage to run towards someone dangerous? Have you ever had to choose between monsters and hope you chose right? Share this video, because somewhere, someone needs to know that when the world fails to protect you, sometimes the people who do aren't the ones wearing badges. See you in the next story. And remember, some people spend their whole lives trying to save one person who's already gone. Maybe that's not redemption, but maybe it's the closest thing to it that broken people get.